Welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Jeff, across the table from Garrett. How goes the battle?
Good, man. Good. What time of year is it?
Still turkey season.
Turkey season.
Well,
tell us about Tell us about your turkey season.
It was great.
How's that going?
It was great for the first 24 minutes, and then it was over.
It was over?
Yep.
Yeah, you tagged out, you bastard. Coffee wasn't even cold.
It was still warm in the truck. But
well,
no, all the scouting I did, all the legwork before the season paid off. Paid off huge. So it wasn't exactly like it was my first day.
Yeah,
starting on the season. That was
good.
Spending,
like weekends up there and going up.
It was a good month's worth of work. So, dawn was at 5:42. At 5:36 a.m., I had both birds on the ground. And they were done. But I got fortunate was last season in the fall. Yeah, where I was sitting for deer. The turkeys were consistently roosting up about 30, 40 yards behind me. And I'd hear them every morning, waking up and making all sorts of fuss and racket. And so come this spring,
doing turkey things,
it's like, okay, well, I assume they're still there. So I went out and talked to the property owners and I said, hey, do you mind if I put up some game cameras?
Right on.
They agreed. So I put up trail cams where I saw that there were, clear pathways that animals were traveling into and out of that area. Yeah. And I would catch the flock of turkeys every single evening, just about. But always in the evening, which is tough because hunting hours for spring turkey end at noon. So it's only morning. So I was getting them going into their roost at night, but not leaving the roost in the morning. If
they're going back that way, the odds are pretty good they're coming out that way.
Yeah. So, the weekend before and the day before, I went out before dawn and would just, pull my truck out into the field, shut all the lights off, and then just sit and listen. And still there, they were still in the same spot. And I kind of got to sit and watch and see roughly around what time they were coming down out of the roost, where they were going and what they were doing. So I formulated a plan. Here's where I'm going to set up, and I'm going to call them, down out of the roost. And I talked to the property owners, like, I'm going to know by 6 o'clock whether this is going to work or not. Because they're either going to come out of the roost and go the other way, or they're coming straight to me. Yeah. And, they started their morning gobbling and making rackets. So I just started calling back to them, and sure as hell, first turkey comes down and almost lands right on my decoy. And I already had the distances measured out. Yeah. So, okay, there goes one. And I don't know if the second turkey thought the first one was fighting with something or whatever the commotion was about. But the second one came down to see what the first one was doing, flopping over.
Like, hey, what happened to Frank? I better go check it out.
So, all right, have the second shell loaded and shot that one.
There you go.
Now, the real kicker was a third Tom came out of the tree that was bigger than the second one that I shot. Oh. And I had to sit there and stare at that big long beard.
Oh, man. Okay.
As he started,
you get a walk.
As he started fighting the second turkey, whatever what they were thinking. So I almost had to chase
turkeys. They don't think much.
Almost had to chase them off. But yeah, it's like an old fashioned double opening day.
There you go.
And then, this morning, was
the man himself.
And I don't want to tell his story out of turn. I'd rather have him on to tell his story, but John tagged out this morning too.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he and I talked, and I said, listen, man, I was like, here's where I was sitting. Here's where what I was doing. Let me know. I'll help. I'll, push. We'll
figure something out.
We'll do what we can do. And he went out and took a very, very similar line to me.
Tagged out.
And sure as hell.
Well,
both of his birds down early in the morning.
Get me out there next Saturday and see if the third time's a charm.
Yep. So we have plans to get you out there. Shotgun's all warmed up.
It's got a couple of notches in it already.
And we'll see. I want to get you on a bird though.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Spring turkey.
Cool.
Turkey's so much fun too because it's more interactive. You're calling and they're responding or they're not responding. So it's a little more of a game than like a deer hunt where you would just be sitting somewhere and hanging
waiting
out
for them to come by.
Not that it's not, both have their pros and cons, but yeah, there's something about.
Well, right on. Right on. Never hunted turkey. I'd like to.
Yeah. So we'll get you out there.
Let's do it. So what else is going on? It's springtime. I don't know if I quite believe it with the weather, though. We only get nice days during the week when we're at work.
Is that block of 3 or 4 weeks where it's...
yeah, where it's a little sketchy one way or the other.
A little bit of cold rain, some nice days.
Yep.
It seems to be kind of going back and forth between cold and rainy and then hot and humid. And then, by the end of the month, it's just going to be that soupy, swampy summer mess.
Yep. We had a good golf outing on Saturday. That was cool.
Yep, hanging out with Brian Chamberlain, who's now retired.
Yeah, retired from the USCCA.
Worked for the USCCA. They had a charity golf tournament down in Falmouth and I forget the name.
It's a puppy rescue.
Pet rescue for the Cape and the Islands.
Yep. Really cool.
Awesome event. They brought bunches
puppies.
of dogs out. Adoptable. So as you're going from the front 9 to the back 9, there's just puppies everywhere that you can play with.
Hey, come and meet me and take me home.
Those cute Adopt Me bandanas. They had food trucks. They had folks there from Tito's. We both won a bottle of Tito's and putting contest.
Yeah, that was cool.
And yeah, we put up I think we put up a respectable score given the
caliber of golfer that was.
Certainly not the -16 that was submitted for the winning score.
The winners. Yeah. And those guys weren't even there to collect their trophies.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, we can't be. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. In good fun. We came in somewhere around the middle of the pack. I'm okay with that.
The gun folks at the event, we did okay. Honorable. We counted all of our strokes. We played legit.
That's right. We played honest golf.
It's a good time.
There it is. A little bit later on, we're going to have Mike Harris, Goals Director of Public Policy, is going to come on to talk about the process matters, right? Because we've touched on it as we've gone through the process, like the bill that's going through the State House right now and the underhanded shenanigans that they that the legislature indulged themselves in getting it passed. So Goal's been like picking that process apart and really like trying to understand it. Yeah. So Mike's going to come on a little bit later and talk to us.
Because not only is that a turd sandwich, they serve that turd sandwich on moldy bread. And they're trying to pass it off as, as filet mignon. And it's
business as usual.
And it's been amazing to see the lawmakers who will say on the side how uncomfortable they are with how things have proceeded, yet voted for it anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And presumably will still vote for it, knowing...
when it comes back out, yeah.
Knowing good and well that this was done in just such a backhanded way. But
well, it says a lot about the way that our situation here in Massachusetts is. So.
Yeah, but more on that later from Mike.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, speaking of judicial systems and fairness.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, nowadays feel that there's several different tiers to our criminal justice system and how things are handled.
You think?
To put it lightly. But last week, so we talked about the consequences of a March 19th no-knock raid by the ATF on Airport Director Brian Malinowski.
Yep. Who
they proceeded to essentially gun down for the deep and terrible offense of defending his home from what appeared to be and arguably was a home invasion. To recap, Malinowski was believed to be selling his legally acquired firearms in a manner to which the ATF believed he should have been a registered dealer. So they proceeded to get a no-knock warrant, send the guys in the vests and plate carriers and all that stuff, kicked in his door in the middle of the night like special operations style.
Yep.
Got into a firefight with the armed homeowner who thinks he's defending his home and killed him before he ever had his day in court.
Yeah, so instead of arresting the guy at his office where he would have been in a few hours' time or, sending him a letter and saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you, they bust his door in, wave guns in his face, and they're surprised when he tries to defend himself.
Right. So this story is, starting to come out, but, less than a couple weeks later, so this is March 28th.
Yeah.
Michael Van Elston
now,
would be in court receiving his sentencing following charges of possessions of an unregistered NFA item, a short barrel shotgun, possession of an unregistered firearm, and unlawful transfer of a firearm to an out-of-state resident. Now, his sentence for that whole mess, 3 years probation. Now, you might ask, why is this guy getting off so light?
Sounds like an imbalance in justice to me.
Well, Van Alsten was allowed to come to a plea bargain. He pled guilty only to the possession of an unregistered firearm and obstruction of justice. And he got that deal.
Why did he get such a good deal?
Well, now he's former, but he was an FBI agent. So his little backstory, so he came into possession of multiple firearms during the course of serving an arrest warrant.
Okay.
He transported the firearms to the FBI field office and subsequently stole them from the evidence room and took them home for his personal gun safe.
Apparently that's a thing.
Now he claims, this is his claim. He claims that this was to avoid their discovery during an upcoming office inspection where he thought these firearms would be problematic because they were not documented properly and he knew it.
So I broke the law, I violated policy, and in order to avoid getting caught, I covered it up.
By stealing the firearms.
Stealing firearms. And that's my defense.
Well, and you might buy that. If he returned the firearms once the inspection was over, I guess they were moving offices or whatever. But did he proceed to return them? No. He transferred, aka sold one of the firearms to a friend, and per court documents told that friend to not let anybody know where that firearm came from. And then he claims to have destroyed the other one, although I can't find a single shred of evidence that that claim is in any way factual. Although that is the agreed upon statement from the defense and the prosecution. So basically it's true because they say it's true.
They agreed that it's true.
But also per these factual statements, he was knowingly in possession of a short barrel shotgun for a period of time where he had some other interactions with law enforcement. It had something to do with a domestic dispute.
Yeah. Speaking of short barreled shotguns.
So little comparative analysis here. So here we have someone who's abusing their authority, stealing firearms from evidence lockers, making unlawful transfers of unregistered NFA items, all of that. Now, the entire Ruby Ridge incident was predicated on the sale of 2 short barrel shotguns.
A paperwork violation. Yes.
Brian Malinowski was killed based on him selling legally acquired firearms, which were sold in accordance with the law, just in a way that the ATF decided that, you know,
should have been
he hadn't cozied up to the man enough. He didn't pay the right people. The VIG wasn't paid.
Yeah. It feels like two-tier justice to me. And I mean, top to bottom, these are paperwork violations.
But an FBI agent steals firearms, has unregistered NFA items, and is allowed to plead down to a baby slap on the wrist and probation.
He got invited into his boss's office for milk and cookies and, you know, said, this is how we're going to handle this so as not to leave a stain on the department. You know, he didn't get ATF'd like this other guy did.
Interesting story. Is anything going to come of it? Of course not, because, you know, per what we see in every law that gets passed, especially on the state level, if the government does it, it's absolutely fine. It's excusable. And even if they do break the leg, we'll cut everybody a lot of slack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, one could make the claim that if it was the rest of us doing that, it wouldn't go so smoothly. If
it was one of us, you know, the unwashed masses, that would have played out a little differently.
But absolutely wild story. It blows my mind that
and it's he thinks that's his valid defense. It's like, oh no, I committed a federal felony in order to cover up my incompetence, so I should be let off with a warning.
Professional misconduct.
Yeah.
Abuse of authority. Well, we're going to cover that up by committing more crimes. And now that I'm caught, okay, I promise I won't break the law for 3 years.
Bringing it a little bit closer to home. This is the search of the apartment in Mansfield, right?
So this is going back to 2021. Mm-hmm. Investigators and law enforcement conducted a search of an apartment in Mansfield, Massachusetts. Ended up turning up a large amount of cocaine-based fentanyl, firearms, one of which had an obliterated serial number.
Yeah, there was 2 guys. I seem to remember when this one happened. It's right down the road.
2 individuals were arrested and charged.
Yep.
One of which guy's name is Malik Parsons. Okay. So they're going through the court process now, and this is setting up for
3 years later,
quite a legal battle. So Parsons was charged and indicted on 4 counts. 1 and 2 was conspiracy to distribute and possession with intent to distribute, like 40 grams or more of fentanyl, 500 grams or more of cocaine, as well as aiding and abetting. And this
Drug dealer. Oh, yeah.
And this is all federal. This is all federal stuff.
Yep. U.S. Code.
21 U.S. Code, Section 846, if my notes are right. Now, count 3 is possession of a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking activity, which is 18 U.S. Code 924.
Yep, 924.
And count 4 was possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number, which is 18 U.S. Code 922K.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Parsons' attorney, Alyssa Hackett, filed a motion to dismiss count 3, the possession of firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking, claiming the underlying statute is a violation of his Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for personal protection. Now you laugh.
I can't,
but
I can't fault the argument though.
Now she claims that the means end test adopted by the federal courts in the wake of DC versus Heller was discarded by Bruin in favor of the text, history, and tradition approach.
Yes.
And per her argument, that approach requires the court to assess whether the law is covered by the Second Amendment's text, and if so, whether it's consistent with historical tradition of firearms regulation. So she says that while the defendant might be properly prosecuted for actively using the gun in the drug trade, keeping a gun in the event of armed confrontation is precisely what the Second Amendment's for.
Well,
credit for creativity.
It's hard to argue that,
I see where they're going with it.
He's, except for the whole drug trafficking thing, he's a citizen in possession of a firearm for self-defense.
And this is just a motion to deny the charges.
Of course.
So hasn't had the, trial yet. This is just pre-trial motions and trying
always, to. Yes. The lawyers will try anything that they'll throw anything at the wall, and they'll hope that something.
Hey, at least just to make their job easier later down the road.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you can imagine that didn't go very far with the judge.
Oh, yeah. No, that went over like a turd in a punch bowl. Took this judge all of about 3 seconds to shoot that down.
Yeah. So Judge Nathaniel M. Gordon, so this is U.S. District Court D in Massachusetts, denied the motion to dismiss the count. And his reason was, yes, DC versus Heller made clear that the Second Amendment right protects the bearing of arms for lawful purposes. So to be found guilty of the crime in question, an individual must possess the firearm in a manner and means to advance or promote the drug crime. So Parsons' claim that the charged conduct covers self-defense against robbery, it's not flying. The allegations that the firearm was possessed, and this is per the judge, for indisputably unlawful purpose of defending a stash of narcotics and ill-gotten proceeds undermines the constitutional assertion of self-defense.
So the judge is saying that, no, you didn't have this gun for self-defense. You had it to defend your ill-gotten goods.
Yeah. And he said that, the same logic holds for, any other act of self-defense. And that's only granted to people who are free from fault in inciting, encouraging, or otherwise promoting that situation where a life might be taken. So, per the judge, there is a history of prohibiting carrying firearms by means to, terrorize the public with ill intent and employing firearms, even defensively, to further a criminal drug conspiracy, and that actually does fit within the tradition of, prescribing
text, history, and tradition. Firearms. Yeah.
So it's an interesting argument because this starts going down that road of how absolute do you feel about the Second Amendment?
It is an interesting argument. It seems clear to me that the reason that this gentleman was carrying a firearm was so that he could, protect himself while he was in furtherance of his felonious activity, right? Let's say, like you said, let's give points to creativity to his defense lawyer, but I think everybody who reads it knows better.
Yeah,
that said, it's hard to argue. It's as a quote gun rights absolutist, it's hard for me to argue that.
Yeah. Does the unscrupulous of society have the right to self-defense the same as everybody else? And, there's arguments to be made that yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, he does.
Yes, I think,
However, it's not even based on the rulings that we've seen come out, it doesn't seem to jive very well. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't hang my hat on that particular nail.
It is an interesting point, though.
But this is part of what came out post Bruin and what people knew was going to happen. So there's a lot of challenges, a lot of creative challenges.
Yes. A lot of splitting hairs, a lot of, novel approaches. This kind of thing was always going to happen post Bruin, but interesting. It's an interesting defense.
So it's still going to have his day in court.
Yeah.
Where I'm sure they will make those continuing arguments.
Yep, they'll still argue that.
What is interesting, though, is that these are all federal charges. So there's nothing in there by means of possession of firearm without a license.
Right, because that's a state thing.
The high-capacity magazine issue, or
large
standard capacity magazines. But
large capacity in Massachusetts.
Yeah, this is kind of out of the state realm. So we'll see how this actually ends up playing out. Because any appeal would go to federal appellate court, not state appellate court. So you never know.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they're doing their political maneuvering too. Now, it's been 3 years, but the wheels of justice turn slowly, I guess.
Well, just because you have the right to a speedy trial doesn't mean you can't opt for a lot of delays. And
that's true. That's true. I don't know why
whatever.
It's taking so long.
Yeah, I thought you liked that one.
Yeah,
it's
it gets right down into my libertarian bones. So I saw this story in The Truth About Guns, and I'd seen it other places as well, and it kind of caught my eye because it's related to HR 615 passed by the U.S. House of Representatives in actually a reasonably bipartisan vote. This is the Protecting Access for Hunters and Anglers Act, and it's actually strongly supported by NSSF.
I'm really happy that it doesn't have some stupid acronym, cheesy.
God, right. Every time you see a bill title now, you have to parse out the acronym and see if it's stupid.
You can just see like the juvenile nature by which bills are.
This one is the pahaha. So the bill basically requires Interior Department and the Agriculture Department to provide scientific data that demonstrates lead ammo or fishing tackle is causing problems with the wildlife. It's one of the prongs of the attack on traditional hunters from the anti-gun people is that lead ammo is poisoning the environment.
Yeah, and imagine that we're in a position now with firearms legislation where they had to pass an act saying that agencies have to actually have scientific evidence of something being a problem before they can just arbitrarily regulate things based on what sounds good on a bumper sticker or a pamphlet somewhere.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean,
you need to make informed legislation instead of,
what? Scientific data?
Wild.
So
Wild.
On one hand, you're absolutely right. It's ridiculous that should even have to be a vote. But so the bill passed. It's on its way to the Senate. But, of course, U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat out of New York, can't stand to be on the right side of anything historically. So she spoke out against this, reasonably common sense bill, naturally. So she went on this tirade about lead ammo, how it's poisoning the environment. It's ruining the water supply. It's ruining everything. And fortunately, kind of the cooler heads prevailed and they were like, okay, sit down.
There's a quote here in the article. HR 615 would prohibit the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service from prohibiting or regulating lead ammunition or tackle on federal lands and waters, even though alternatives do exist that do not poison everything in sight.
She says. Yeah.
Republicans on the Natural Resource Committee, she said, quote, are putting forward an agenda brought to you by GOP, guns, oil, and polluters.
I think if not for completely uninformed hyperbole, I think that Cortez would have nothing to say at all.
I mean,
naturally her facts are completely false. The data and science support that lead ammunition is not a problem. It has never been a problem in the 400 years that it's been used here. Not a single person has ever been diagnosed with having, elevated lead levels because of their use or their consumption of game animals that were shot with lead ammunition. It's ridiculous. In going down this path, she's parroting the common anti-gun thing that says we want to ban all lead ammunition, right? And they don't really care about banning lead ammunition. They care about making ammunition more expensive.
They care about banning cost-efficient ammunition,
right.
Is what it is.
Right. They want to price people out of being gun owners.
Because, and hey, you could take this for what it's worth, because I think they've certainly tarnished their reputation over the last handful of years. But, CDC studies going back to the early 2000s found that, lead levels in the blood of hunters consuming wild game usually lower than that of individuals in the same community that didn't harvest their own game meat. I mean, it's not to say that eating wild game is, inherently better or anything else like that. It's just saying that there's no connection between the two at all.
It's not worse.
Yeah.
It's certainly not worse the way that she's claiming it. So anyway, so she can't, as usual, she can't be bothered to look at science.
Yeah. And then they always, they go back to all of the animal issues that they've been claiming in my entire lifetime, everything from owls to condors to eagles.
Yep.
And they're saying that, it's absolutely for certain that the problem is the hunters.
It's always the hunters.
And they're casually ignoring that the reintroduction and the survival of these species has relied almost entirely on Pittman Robertson funding.
Yeah, we always come back to this. It's
all
like
of this
people
stuff
who are so up in arms about hunters, and hunters are terrible people. Well, guess who's paying for all this?
That's all
this
paid by
land.
Firearm industry people. That's paid for by the hunters, the anglers, the tackle, the weight. The fishing
billions
tackle you buy,
of dollars
the waders,
a year.
the tents and the camping gear and the hunting equipment and the tree stand that you get. All of that stuff gets taxed, and that money has been setting up the survival of these areas.
If you're walking your dog on free conservation land,
thank a hunter.
Yeah, right. Thank a hunter. You didn't pay for that. So anyway, that's an interesting story. I'm kind of curious to know how that's going to go in the Senate. I have a feeling that it'll pass, just because it's pretty bipartisan. But then again, I can't.
And it's funny because
right. Here's a law that says you have to get scientific data.
And
what a concept.
I don't mean to necessarily pick on her per se, because really this is writ large the behavior of a lot of gun control people. But they make these wild, declarative statements, and then someone says, "Hey, can you show me the data that actually supports that?" And they go, "Well, I don't have it with me." But this is common sense, right? Everybody knows this.
Or you do the Kathy Hochul thing, or where it's like, I don't need data to support my anti-gun positions. What I feel is just right. Yeah. All right, so joining us today, we have Mike Harris, Gun Owners Action League, Director of Public Policy. I love that you have like a gilt, written in gold and big title.
Do you mean guild?
Tomato.
Mike, how's it going, man?
It's going. We're like in this like weird limbo state, but it's going.
We are like every time we do one of these episodes, we finish out by saying nothing's changed. We're still waiting.
Which is not the worst thing ever.
I'm fine. I am totally fine with saying nothing's changed. Yeah, I had no problem with that.
Let's all knock on all the wood in our eyesight right now. But I have to be honest. I'm not white pilled, but I'm not black pilled on things lately, because we were at the State House last week for a meeting, and we were there the week before for the House budget. And the building is a lot less empty than it was last year.
Really?
There were actually people there. I mean, it wasn't nowhere near
not like
the activity that nowhere near the activity we saw. Like, I hate saying pre-COVID and post-COVID, but nowhere near the activity we saw pre-COVID. But people are back in the building.
They're
Showing up
slowly,
for work.
slowly doing the jobs we
Yeah.
What?
And I'm not even just talking about the politicians and the staff who, I'm cool with not being in the building.
Yeah, right.
But
They can take all the time off that they want.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about like the advocates and the students and everybody. So it looks like people are starting to care again. I mean, we talk about COVID a lot, and how it kind of took things away from us.
Yeah.
It kind of changed not just the landscape of like policy decisions and like how much like they discovered how much people are willing to take, but it also stopped people from doing the things that they used to do, like show up to things. I mean, that's actually been one of the biggest things I've been. Yeah, I mean, that's actually been one of the biggest things I've been dealing with since I started at Goal, was getting people to show up to stuff. Yeah, I mean, just the rally and
getting people
annual
to
meeting.
engage. Yeah,
engagement is doable if you're sitting behind a computer screen and typing.
Yeah, more than like forwarding Facebook posts and stuff like that. Actually going out and showing up for stuff has been tough.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're starting to give in a little bit on some of the I don't know. Jim and I had a really long conversation about this. We don't like form letters. They don't have the same effect that actually writing your own letter has, because you can, as a former staffer, not even just easy to ignore, they're easy to categorize. So as a former staffer to a few different legislators up there, we would get stuff and we'd be like, oh, this looks like all the rest of them. It goes in this pile. You're a number. We know exactly what it says. You're going to get this canned response. So, we really resisted the like fillable form letter kind of thing. But, as time kind of is starting to compress with the conference committee, and people are just looking to just get things to the legislature as quick as they can. For the last mailing we did, we put together a form letter and we sent it out. And, we specifically targeted the districts of the 6 folks who are on the conference committee for, a specific letter, because they're uniquely positioned to have a greater impact on the decisions of that legislator, because they can vote for them or not vote for them. So, we're I guess in limited situations like this, we're kind of starting to embrace that a little bit, but we're still a little resistant.
So like form letters may not be great, but I guess they're still better than nothing.
Yeah. It's better than nothing. Absolutely. And you will never get that argument from any of us. However, when, during the listening tour and, right after the bills were released, we got a lot of questions from people like, hey, where's your fillable form? Where's all this? And we're like, that doesn't matter. You have time right now to write something.
Freaking write something up.
So writing something from scratch and making it your own and having it be unique language to you makes it so that legislator or their staff has to actually read it to understand what you're saying, to know what's in it. It has to be read. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So if they get like 400 different form letters, that's 400 people in a pile somewhere that are going to get a canned response that all think the same thing. So that's why we were resistant to that for a while. But time is of the essence at the moment. The session ends July 31st. We're kind of
standing by.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of looking at things. Last week we had a meeting with Joan Lovely, who's the chair of the Senate Rules Committee, and she's also on the conference committee. Yep. But she's also an LTC holder. Yeah. She's taken a whole bunch of classes. She also voted yes, but yeah, but she's also the chair of the Rules Committee. Yeah. And that has an impact on, and being part of leadership in either chamber has a big impact on the way that a legislator is going to vote. It's not supposed to, but it's kind of just a symptom of our system, and it's a symptom of what we have voted ourselves into.
Well, as the leader of the Rules Committee, has she shared any perspective on what they think about how all this was done, how all this came to be? Because one of the things that we've been talking about and that goal has been pushing on is the fact that the process broke down so bad. So is there any
Didn't break down?
Well,
Started out ridiculous.
They didn't even follow it. So, I mean, we're used to politicians doing scummy things in order to get their way, right? But this, like,
Yep.
this
is
reeked
the
of something
first
a little
time-
extra?
This is like the first time in my, innocent history where I've seen something go so far off the rails, and just like every step of the way was done in such an underhanded, cynical, slimy manner in order to get the predetermined outcome that they wanted, right? And
No, it stayed on the rails. It was just on rails in a secret tunnel that nobody saw that went underground and disappeared. And but that's the thing about this whole process that's been bothering us. So I've been doing this a long time. I went to school for this. This is what I wanted to do when I went to law school. So I had a really heavy focus on the legislative process, and the separation of powers and the way things shake out. Each of the three branches, including the two chambers of the legislature, kind of get to set their own rules of operation. That's how it works. So embedded within those rules are some really odd things that you have to kind of dig in to understand. It's not surface level stuff. And there's also some things that are surface level, but that are very commonly and quickly and easily done. But when you really think about what it means and you stop and look at it, it really is shocking. It's a shock to the system. So one of the rules that each house has, each chamber has, and one of the joint rules that they have is that they can suspend the rules.
like, that's not a rule then.
Yeah. So goal is apolitical. We don't take sides regarding party, but traditionally one party has been more favorable to our issue area than another.
Sure.
But once you have a group of people who are so embedded and have such I like to call it a hyper majority rather than a super majority, because there's supercars and then there's the hypercars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So they have a hyper majority where one party can just kind of do whatever they want. So when you have a rule that says you can suspend the rules, it really just means
there are no rules.
There are no rules. You can do anything,
do whatever they want.
Yeah, you steam
literally
the
anything
opposition.
you want.
There is no meaningful opposition, and what opposition there is has no power and recourse because of this. Because of the fact that they can just roll right over them.
And the opposition has giant holes in it, also, as we saw with the Senate vote numbers. It is what it is. The wall.
Yeah, right.
The wall is
Even
not a wall.
The opposition is not all that friendly to us. So.
Yeah, the wall is not a wall. So usually, in order to get, we're referring to the process on the House side specifically.
Yeah,
I think. They proposed HD 4420. It never made it out of Judiciary Committee to the Rules Committee. It was stopped in its tracks. So Chairman Day redrafted it, made it a new version that was basically the same as the old version. And then rather than allow it to be stopped in its tracks again, so they took a rule that's kind of not well known, and they kind of pushed the bill through using it. They took the text of the bill, found a supplemental budget bill, basically hollowed it out, stuck their language in it,
removed the budget language. Right?
Yes, remove the budget language. Yep. Stuck their language in it, all the while suspending the rules, I think 3 or 4 times to get to it. And then basically took a time machine back, pretended that language had always been there, and then pushed it to the floor via the House.
Yeah, they essentially used a bill that had already passed through several steps and said, all this gun control language was in there the entire time, which means that it passed.
Exactly.
And then now we can suck it out and make it its own standalone thing and then skip essentially the majority of the legislative process.
So the most egregious part of that, to me, actually, there's two that really offend me. The House Ways and Means Committee only meets, Actually, there's three things. So the House Ways and Means Committee only meets
Actually, there's
twice.
4 things. It's just
Yeah, twice. Only meets about twice a session, and that's really to push the initial budget
the
language
budget stuff. Yeah.
have that hearing, and then as they need to for supplemental budget stuff. This had nothing to do with anything to do with the budget.
No,
They
of course not.
just they called a special hearing to do this, and then gave the floor to the Judiciary Committee.
Jesus.
This is just unheard of. But the big thing about this is the House is the only this is the only chamber of the legislature that can actually do this. So anything that has to do with money, or taxation, any kind of levy or any kind of spending bill, grants,
money bill,
anything that has to do with funding has to start in the House, or the House is the only chamber that could have actually done this. If this had started in the Senate and this was one of President Spilka's priorities, this wouldn't have happened because she doesn't have the tools at her disposal to do this.
Not this way, anyway.
Yes, not this way. So, doing this was really it was aggressive. Like this was specifically targeted at Yes. This was a way to get around the open process. This was a way to kind of circumvent the public comment period and say like, hey, we already did this. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, let's just keep pushing forward.
Yeah. So, the House pulled all their shenanigans. The fact that this didn't even get out of the clerk's office with a House bill number, it stayed a docket number until, basically it was ready to get passed, is unheard of. I've never seen anything like that. I've been doing this a really long time.
So many times during this whole thing, you hear things like, I've never seen this done like this before. This has never happened before. Yeah. I've been doing this a long time and they've never done it this way before. It speaks loudly to the way that
we've seen some absolute just donkey shows come out of the legislature. And for people to go, I've never seen this nonsense before is really saying something. Yeah. Like this is beyond the pale for people who are used to no consequences at all.
Yeah.
So it's really something. Right. But Mike, so Goal has since launched processmatters.org as a website.
Yes.
And maybe you could talk about what it is, what the push is for that, and what it means for the members.
So the idea was to codify all this, right? Because I know you did a lot of research on it.
As this was moving along, I took pretty extensive notes because when a few things started to happen that I kind of recognized as irregular, I was like, oh, this is going to be something.
This smells funny.
Yeah. So I have this black moleskin notebook that I keep all of my really important notes in. It's this big black notebook.
My portable brain. I have one of those. It's brown.
Yeah. The fact that they pushed this to a hearing before it had an actual bill number made me pause. So
red flags. Yeah.
The first time I saw that happen, I said, okay, I need to go back and write down all of the dates and all of the events that have happened throughout this entire process. This might be a thing. So I went to Jim and I was like, hey, I'm going to start keeping track of all of this. Do you remember the dates of all this stuff? Because I remember the first time the bill was released, I was at the Topsfield Fair working the booth, and I had bad cell service, and I couldn't read the bill, and I was losing my mind. Yeah, it was bad. I was like, oh, I'm actually working on a Saturday, and I can't read this thing. What is happening? So I started writing it all down, and I started to write this really, really inflated, really, really long timeline with links and definitions and a glossary and all this stuff. And Jim looked at it and was like, this is insane. Nobody's going to read this. It's like a red, oh dude, it's like a red threadboard. It was wild. But he looked at it and he was like, we can't publish this. Let's shrink it down a little bit. So I shrunk it down to kind of bite-sized bits, and I gave it to him, and he did his Jim thing and made it, more digestible. So what it is just a basic breakdown of the timeline of this thing, all the way going back to the announcement of Mike Day being the point man for gun control in Massachusetts.
Way back in 2022, right after Bruin came down.
Yes, exactly. Right after Bruin came down. So it actually starts in last session when they passed, when we should have seen this coming, when they took the last minute, they took a supplemental bond bill for judiciary technology.
The IT bill. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And a judicial IT bill.
Yep.
And stuffed an entire section of Bruin response law into it on at the 11:30 hour.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the stuff that codified the suitability into law.
Yep. Exactly.
Yes.
There was some, to be fair, there was some good stuff in it, but they also took the opportunity to just smear crap all over the walls.
Yeah.
Inside of their good stuff. But that was one of those things that even a lot of our friends and the folks who would never vote for something like that had no choice, because the judicial bond bill was something that had been called for by both sides of the aisle for, the last
they essentially pigeonholed people into sticking with this thing that needed to be done, and they leveraged the fact that it needed to be done to pass a bunch of otherwise unpalatable things.
Yeah, yep, and that's the that's the name of the game for a lot of this stuff.
That's the modus operandi.
So
yeah,
yep, that's how they do almost everything. So almost everything controversial, so that they can just kind of blame the minuscule minority for their ridiculousness.
Right. Your 5 Republicans are the ones that are really responsible for all this. Yeah.
I remember when Eric Lesser was running for lieutenant governor, and this is just a joke, and he was like, "Oh, I stood up to the Republicans when they were trying to do this." It's like, "Oh, wow. You were in the Senate, right? You stood up to all 3 of those guys?" Yeah,
it's like a 50-to-1 ratio.
Oh, boy. Good for you. You must have some serious battle scars after that one.
Yeah, what a champion of the people. But
oh man.
But it's clearly a breakdown of the process. And then now, the question is, what do we do moving forward? Regardless of what happens, we're expecting some sort of, there's going to be something. Because I think at this point, the only thing that would be a loss to them is no bill at all.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I don't think is going to happen, where we see absolutely nothing.
I would love for them to totally vapor lock and not be able to come to some kind of agreement.
Trip over themselves.
I would, but
I don't have a lot of hope that that's going to happen.
So a lot of times in Massachusetts, we see this when we have a Democratic governor. There's weird glory chasing from all 3 of the
power brokers, the
residential power brokers in the state house.
Yep.
But
but the question that I have is, what is in the grand scheme of the negotiations between the House and the Senate and the back office dealings to get things passed and committees and everything else, is Mariano, who is on his way out, not willing to concede whatever he wants to get his little pet project passed?
Right. I think
which I think he would be. So I think it's really just kind of I feel whatever the Senate wants, they're going to get, as long as they kind of allow something to go through. So
whatever their internal squabbles, I feel like their unified hatred for us is going to outweigh that, and they're going to, they'll come to some kind of an agreement.
So there's a lot to be read into the fact that Cindy Cream was the lead on this for the Senate side. She's the majority leader.
Yeah.
Which is a purely political position. Mm-hmm. And she's been in the legislature for
800 years. Yeah.
I'm not going to insult her, but she's been there for a long time.
Oh, 800 years.
And I think there's something to be read into the fact that President Spilka appointed her rather than the chair of a relevant committee to do this. She kind of, I think, is looking at this as a political bargaining chip more than a policy priority.
All right.
Which is why, Mariano appointed Mike Day to do this as the chair of judiciary.
For the same reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So this was a policy priority for him, which is, odd to me, knowing him from past legislative sessions. Like I said, I think there's something to be read into that. So I'm a little nervous if we start seeing some of President Spilka's priorities start to move in the House side.
Yeah, because that means she's getting favors. Yeah.
Not even favors. They're just negotiating.
Just means, people are starting to play ball.
Yeah.
and things are
and a lot of times
when you have momentum.
Exactly.
So goddamn disgusting.
But once you have that kind of momentum going,
Yes.
then it's easier to kind of keep the ball rolling and move stuff along.
Gross that you have to like even look at it this way. Like, oh, if this person starts getting their horse traded things, well, then, we know what's going on. That's not how representative democracy is supposed to work, damn it. But
your constitutional, your Second Amendment constitutional rights are worth the same amount as mandatory child care and universal family leave.
Yeah. Here's this bargaining.
That's the issue.
Yikes.
Yeah. So
gross.
That's the stuff I'm keeping an eye out for.
Yeah.
Myself, just that's the math I've done on the situation. But I mean, you can look at it from a cynical point of view and be like, oh, she's treating this, the fact that she appointed Cindy Cream to do this and not like the chair of, public safety or judiciary to do this. You can kind of look at it from the point of view like, oh, she's willing to bargain on this. Or you can look at it, be like, oh, she's trying to get her policy prescriptions done and is like kind of putting up a wall on this stuff as long as she can get what she wants. So
I'm a cynic, so I tend to think more along those lines. Yeah.
I'm kind of with you, but at the same time, the clock is ticking.
Yeah. So tea leaves aside, I mean,
we can't.
Nothing's really moving or hasn't moved as of yet, as we've recorded this. And okay, I'm going to say for the record, it's, May 6th in the evening. So this could be totally wrong first thing in the morning. But in the meanwhile, while everybody's, we as firearms owners and everything are kind of in this holding pattern, waiting to see, which shoe drops and when, what can the members do? What can people do to hopefully have a positive impact for the Second Amendment, for the gun owners? Is there anything people can be doing in the meanwhile that might help the cause?
Yeah, reach out to the 6.
Yeah.
And then and also the other thing that we haven't really spoken about yet because it's not on that step yet. Also reach out to your local legislator again, because if they release a bill from the conference committee, it's going to go back to both houses, the House and the Senate, for an up or down vote. There's no debate, there's no negotiations, there's no amendments, there's no public hearing, there's no nothing. It goes back to them for an up or down vote, yes or no, and then
straight
that's
to the
game.
Governor. Yeah, that's it.
And so the presumption is once if something does move, it's then going to move very quickly.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, and that's the way it goes. So, and that's what we've been kind of harping on this whole time is that, sure, the Senate, we didn't even get to talk about the Senate's process on this whole thing for what that's worth or, lack thereof. At this point, that doesn't matter because literally everything is back on the table at this point. And the House, who has the more egregious language, the two Democratic members of the conference committee are pushing hard for their version of this bill. And if somebody gives in on something else, we could end up with that 140-page nonsense bill.
Yeah.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we say everything's on the table, there can be things on the table that weren't in either one of the bills that were already proposed, right?
Could they introduce an entirely new concept?
Yeah, they could. Given the way that this process has gone, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
They can do that. But that's also part of, they would argue that that's part of negotiations because, if they can come to some kind of a compromise that isn't language that was in either version of the bill, but still relates back to it.
Yeah, they can do anything. They can do like anything.
Yep.
All right. So you can check out, it's processmatters.org. processmatters.org. It redirects to a goal page, or you can get there directly from goal.org and look at the Process Matters section. It's a timeline. It's well written, but it's based on all of this research and stuff that you did, right? It's based on that. You guys hashed it out, went back and forth. So it's a list of dates and a list, not a comprehensive list, but a list of the highlights, right? Because like you were saying, if it was a comprehensive list, it'd be the size of Glidden's book.
Oh my God, Garrett! I literally have I have a file on a thumb drive of all of this stuff, and it's literally just it's links to it's like a whole bunch of hyperlinks like written down in like back to the rules page, and it like refers you to cases like precedential cases and stuff like that. It's wild.
I'd be interested in seeing it. I didn't actually get to finish it because we kind of slowed down because we need to get something out. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I kind of got halfway done, and he was like, "Oh, well, if you finish it, we can use it as like a historical piece." But this is ridiculous.
Well, Mike, I mean, it's been a tremendous amount of work, and it's an impressive volume. I mean, you guys,
it really is
yeoman's work.
Yeah,
it's putting it all together, making the information available and digestible for the members, and it's not unrecognized and greatly appreciated, let me tell you.
Goal.org, processmatters.org, getting it done, man. Getting it done. So we're all in a holding pattern. Well done.
Mike, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. We know you're on dad duty and bath time and Ninja Turtles and everything is waiting.
Right. So. I can see the house catching fire behind you. The kids are
Won't take any more of your time, and we'll have to catch up soon, and we got play some golf later this summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, someday, so my kids are 5 and 2, and someday they'll know how important this is. I promise.
That's why you're doing it. That's why you're doing it. Right
exactly.
on, man.
All right, guys. All right. Thanks for having me.
Awesome as always. Boys. Thank you for taking the time.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. Good having Mike on. Mike, when you listen to this, I got to say it again. Really appreciate you taking time out from dad duty. I know that you were like, you're like stranded at home. He's like, no, I can do it. I can do it. We'll make it work. Really appreciate it, man. Appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Part of the amazing thing of the Second Amendment work is setting it up for generations to come. So
absolutely, those kids of his and my kid, and your future kids and everybody's kids will someday appreciate what's been happening now. Hopefully. So here we are. It is
beginning of May.
Beginning of May.
Which means time for the drill of the month.
Drill of the month. Yeah,
so drill of the month for May. Last month was the Mozambique drill. Very simple drill, 7 yards, the whole 2 to the chest, 1 to the head thing. Mm-hmm. Finally got the video done for that. I finished it I think today. It was a little bit of last minute stuff.
Yep.
Took me forever for a video that's less than 2 minutes long, but
by the time this episode airs, it will be on YouTube.
Yes, and you get to see exactly how I shot it. The good and the bad.
Jeff is human. Jeff's human.
But for next month, I don't have a drill on deck per se. What I did was I went to the range and I was trying out a couple of things. Videos will be coming forward regarding those topics. So not necessarily a drill, but still something to get people out to the range. In this case, looking at the effective range of a snub-nose revolver. Mm-hmm. And then looking at selecting...
You own revolvers?
I do. I own a couple of them. I just don't carry them. Listen, I've always said I got nothing against revolvers. I just think they're obsolete for concealed carry.
I tease.
But that and looking at defensive loadings for shotguns, I was trying out a couple different things. So federal flight control versus Hornady versus, some other stuff. So
right on.
Kind of not necessarily, it's not a review. It's not saying, hey, pick this brand over that brand, but more just here's a way to approach and think about it for what may or may not work for you and some of the factors that I look at considering that kind of stuff.
Cool. All right. So that's upcoming.
And really the inspiration from it is, always looking at, from my perspective being on the board and for what, my role has been with Goal is I always want to make sure that members feel like, yes, their money is going towards the advocacy, the legislation, the lawsuit, but I also want to make sure that people feel like they're getting as great a bang for the buck as possible. So
sure.
So, all this stuff that, between the podcast and the drill of the month and now doing the video stuff, this is all, it's like out of your pocket. It's out of my pocket. This is our time and dime outside of normal working hours. So this is the kind of thing where I, would say, reaching out to the members and saying, hey, is this the kind of thing that you think is a value add to your membership? Or is this the kind of thing that you say like, hey, I'd rather you be spending your time doing something else. But
fair enough.
that's what we got going on. So hopefully I'll be able to cut those videos together a little bit faster than the Mozambique drill. If I get a free weekend, but we got to get you out for turkeys.
Absolutely. Got to go
the next weekend or two.
Got to go get some birdies. So yeah, check out the YouTube page, check out the Goal Podcast page for links and all that good stuff, and keep up with us, and please spread the word. Doing what we're doing.
All right. And that's it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join and Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, if you have a question for the mailbag, or you want to make fun of how I shot the Mozambique drill, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed to those of the hosting guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.